afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Christine Sheritz, and I'm going to be doing the professional development that you were supposed to get on Friday, September 20th via a video. That way, you guys have a 3-day weekend. Dr. Winder thought you'd probably want to leave early to get on that helicopter, and so she has allowed me to do this video. You do need to watch the video in its entirety, and then send myself and Dr. Winder an email letting me know that you completed it. I have a couple questions at the end I'd really like you to complete if you don't mind, just to get feedback, and I'd like to know what you learned during the video. Okay, we are going to skip over because you guys don't need to see me, but this is our objectives for today. We're going to look at our ELA block and analyze it. We're going to review and discuss our ELA schedules, create expectations for those schedules and lesson plans. We want to create a reading and writing culture inside the school that's focused on measurable results. So using data, we want to discuss the importance of planning. And then we're going to go over a model called the 20-60-20 model for teaching, for reading block. You can also do it for your math block. This is a video that I'd like you to watch. I can't show it while I'm doing the Google Meet. The sound doesn't work, but I hope that you will. Watch it, this video, because it explains how kids learn to read and the importance of kids knowing automatically how to read. So I hope you will watch it. It gives a good baseball analogy. So if you like baseball, you'll like it. This is what we call the simple view of reading. The simple view of reading is just this. We have word recognition. Word recognition is decoding. It's encoding. So we want to be able to read and write. You have to do both. You have to decode. Decode is reading. Encoding is writing. Decoding, encoding, both important. They go hand in hand. If you're doing UFly, you know that they also write. So they decode and they encode, but you need to do both. Word recognition is phonics, encoding, decoding. It's phonological awareness. It's phonemic awareness. And it is also word recognition. Language comprehension is all the things that kids have to know and to be able to comprehend. Together, both of those equal reading comprehension. Now, a lady named Scarborough, Dr. Scarborough, she expanded this simple view of reading into what we call Scarborough's reading rope. And it's a pretty popular model, and it's actually in your Savez teacher's manual if you look at it. So the top of the Scarborough's reading rope is all the language comprehension skills. We have background knowledge. So you guys know that your kids, they have some background knowledge that I wouldn't have. They know about horses. They know about the environment, waterfalls and floods that happen. They have a lot of background knowledge, but there's some background knowledge that they don't have because some of your students have been limited on where they have been, their experiences. So background knowledge, vocabulary. Vocabulary is so important. You have to teach vocabulary. You have language structure. That's syntax and semantics. You have verbal reasoning. Do kids know things like inferences and metaphors, analogies? Then you have literary knowledge. That is, do kids know about print concepts for your younger kids? Do you teach genres? Do you teach text structure? All of that's important. And then we have our word recognition, our phonological awareness. That's phonemes and syllables, our decoding, and then our sight word recognition. So she just expanded the simple view of reading to show you exactly all of the components that it should have. Now, this is another video I'll have you watch. And in this is Simon Sinek. He wrote a book that I really enjoyed about Know Your Why. In this video, he talks about what he learned from the Marines that he was actually stayed with for a while and observed. What he learned from the Marines is that The military are great at making plans. But what's important isn't necessarily the plan, but the process of planning. So when you are planning, you're learning, you're taking in information, you're going over your data for your class. That helps you to be able to teach in person with your students. I could not imagine teaching without a plan. First of all, it's stressful, very stressful, because you don't know what you're doing. Things go so much more smoothly when you have a plan. But as this video talks about, it's the process of planning that's so important. So I hope you watch it. So the process of planning is more important than the actual plan. So I hope you, as we go through this, you'll understand why planning is important. So let's look at your ELA block. And I want us to see the big components. We have whole group, we have centers, we have small group instruction. So I just kind of want to go over this and remind you of your schedules. Here's everybody's schedule. I'm going to stop here at the first grade one. So I know we have a couple long-term subs, so I'm just going to kind of go over everything. In everyone's schedule, there's one part of your schedule is your whole group instruction using SAVES. This is where kids get grade level instruction. Can they read it independently? No, they cannot. But this is where you are modeling the reading, you're modeling the comprehension, you're teaching them vocabulary through the shared reading and interactive read alouds. They are hearing it. And remember what we learned when we looked at the simple view of reading, that's language comprehension. Kids need that at their grade level. So you are doing it with them, with their open text. Then we get into small group instruction. This is critical too, because this is differentiated instruction based on their grade level. So you may have fifth graders that you have to differentiate to a second grade level, or you may have seventh graders that you have to differentiate to a third grade level. My suggestion is when you do this, the small group and the centers, that whatever skill you've taught in whole group, you emphasize that in small group. If you're studying cause and effect in your SAVES whole group lesson, you're modeling the thinking that's needed for cause and effect. Then when you do your small groups and centers, the kids should be practicing that at their level. So you could then have a small group in which they're reading. You might have 3 groups. All 3 groups are reading a different book at a different level, but they're all working on cause and effect. You've already modeled that in your whole group instruction. So now they get to practice it in their own reading. We also have centers. So you will always be one center. You should probably have a word work center, and I've sent you tons of different games. Again, it should be differentiated based on assessment data. And you could also have an iReady center where kids are working on their work independently. That's not the only centers you can have, but those are some suggested ones. So let's go back to this. We're going to go back to, I want to talk to you about what we call 20-60-20 model for ELA. Some of you that have worked for the Department of Defense know this because Department of Defense schools use this model. So let's talk about this for a minute. Your schedule is, I designed it like this. The percentages aren't exactly the same, but they're pretty close. You have the opening. The opening lesson is your SAVES lesson. This is where you're doing your whole group instruction. This is where students, you're teaching, you're activating knowledge. This is what we're going to learn today, guys. We're doing cause and effect. This is where you're teaching vocabulary. You're introducing those literary objectives, those vocabulary. You're establishing a purpose for reading. And then you may have a formative assessment. Then you have a larger work sessions model. This is your small group and centers. This is where you have individual and small group work. So individual, some kids might be working individually and some will be in their centers. So You're going to do work on complexity of text. You're going to do reading and writing. You're going to have purposeful questions. Kids are going to practice vocabulary. So this is the center. So that's the big, or the work session, they call it, is the biggest block. Then we have a closing. And you're going to notice from last year, we added a closing at the end. The closing is where you're recapping. This is what we learned in ELA. You're going to acknowledge and celebrate mastery of goals. Remember, we're focusing on measurable goals. So instead of saying, good job, we're going to be measurable. What did they do well? What's measurable that you can show them? And you're going to be summarizing and transferring it into what they're going to be learning the next day. So again, the opening session, this is your whole group. You're going to establish a purpose, get the kids excited about the lesson, teach vocabulary, and you might have a formative assessment. The good news is, here in a little bit, I'm going to show you where there are already pre-made PowerPoints in Savez that have all of this for you. It has the purpose of the lesson. It has an anticipatory set. It has the vocabulary. It's done for you. You just need to use it. Teacher clarity. Remember when we talked about our last professional development, I talked to you about statistics and research, and we said that anything that was 0.5 or above was pretty high in effect size. Teacher clarity is 0.75. That means it's very high. What do I mean by teacher clarity? That means you should always communicate the intentions of the lesson and what kids have to do to be successful. That's why you have to have those I can statements. Research shows that teacher clarity, which is organized, which is organization, explanations, examples, guided practice, and assessments, has a very high correlation to student achievement. So you need to know what you're doing. You need to know your purpose. That's why planning is important. If you don't know, how will the kids know? So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to review. I want you to review a lesson in Savez, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to download a PowerPoint, and I'm going to see if I can show you how to do that here. So what's going to be hard is I'm going to have to go through two places. So I'm going to go to Savez here. And I have to kind of toggle back and forth because I have to make sure I remember how to do this. Okay, there we go. I've given you the directions. So we're going to go to any grade level. So doesn't matter what grade level. I'm just going to go to second grade. What do I have now? Go to getting started with my view. Okay, let's do that. Get started with my view. There we go. Open in a new window. And I'm going to do for implementation. And I'm going to do second grade. Let's go all the way down here. What do you see? Unit 1 PowerPoints. Okay, clicking it on. And then we have each week. So if you're on Unit 1, week 5, let's just say, that's about where you guys should be now. Click that on. It's loading. Now, 7th and 8th grade, I need to find out where your PowerPoints are because you're in a different system than everybody else. So I will have to find yours for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the PowerPoint for this lesson. And I apologize, it's taken me a minute to do that. So here we go. So here is Unit 1, Week 5, Grade 2. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but all the teacher directions are at the bottom. So my suggestion is this. You guys are doing UFly. So you do not have to do all of the phonological awareness and phonics because that's going to be hitting UFly. So my suggestion would be to go to where they have to start working on their reading. Okay, so we can see here that this is from page 158 and 159. And it looks like they have below here, says, remind students of the essential question, how do different places affect us? It literally gives you all of the information down at the bottom. So while the kids are seeing this on your smart board, they should have a copy of it. All of the kids have enough copies for them to have their own text. So they're looking at that text while you're doing this with them. And here is what you're going to say. Here's the script down here. So listening comprehension, you're telling the students that you're going to read aloud a realistic fiction, and they need to listen, and they need to listen to the problem, the main events that they're going to write down, and the resolution. It's done for you. You just got to type it in there. Then they're going to read this realistic fiction story. You're going to read it with them. Tells you, turn to page 164 of your book. And again, down here it has the information and what you can say. It gives you engaging things to do. Discuss with a partner your reasons for reading. You can't climb a cactus. I wouldn't want to climb a cactus. Now, going over vocabulary. So we have 3 vocabulary words: different, compare, and locate. And it has down here ideas that you can give for teaching that vocabulary. Handwriting, okay? So it's giving you ideas for handwriting. And then we get into launching a writing workshop, where this is going to go into writing. Now, what you need to decide is what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. You may not use this spelling because you may think my kids are not at that level, and you're going to do the spelling with UFly. So delete that slide. Conventions. Maybe that needs to be taught. All of that is lesson 1. Here's lesson 2. So all of what I told you before was one day. But again, take out the slides that you aren't going to need, which I would suggest would probably be the phonics part. And you might not do all the spelling part, because again, you're going to be getting that in UFly when you do UFly. So if you're new to grade level, if you're a long-term sub, even anybody, I would use this. And I've been teaching for 35 years reading. I would use this because it's going to guide you. It's going to make sure that you teach those concepts. So we can see that in this particular lesson, the kids were learning about plot elements, right? Problem, main ideas, main events, and resolution. So when you go into your small group, you should be reading realistic fiction, right? And they should be practicing what's the problem, what's the main events, and what's the resolution. But they're going to be different books based on the kids' reading levels. Okay, let's go back to our original PowerPoint here. So I really hope that you'll find those PowerPoints helpful. I know I did. So do these lessons clearly articulate the purpose? So I saw on those slides, they had a purpose, they had an activity, they had vocabulary, which is what you're supposed to do in the 20 part, in that opening. Then you get into your work sessions, your centers. Remember, you need to have engaging students in the learning individual and small group work that promote complexity of reading. You need to have questions. You need to have academic vocabulary, evidence of student thinking, differentiated small groups. All of this is going to happen during your work session. Then, of course, our closing, our celebrations, summarizing the main concepts, and allowing students to reflect on learning. That's the 20-60-20 model. And I hope you see that your schedules align with that model and that framework. Just a reminder, when planning whole group instruction, use the lowest grade for whole group. Be mindful of the stories you taught the year before. For example, If you teach first and second grade, you would use the first grade. If you teach seventh and eighth, you're going to use the seventh grade. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So what I want to show you here is this is the lesson plan template that Dr. Winder provided. And she said this is the expectation for lesson plan. So you can see that it has the lesson topic, the unit, standards, and DOK, questions, and so forth. Well, maybe it's been a while since you know since you've heard about DOK, but Webb's depth of knowledge, what is that? We have different levels of thinking. Level 1 is recall and reproduction. So if you are, if kids have to identify letters, that's recall. Level 2, skills and concepts. We have strategic thinking and reasoning and extended thinking. So I'm going to get into a little more detail about what those are. And that's got to be on this video that I cannot show you, but I will send the link. Looks like I have a lot of links to videos to send you. So you need to be mindful that you're not just teaching DOK1. If you're following Savez and you're doing that PowerPoint that I showed you for your whole group, you will be teaching higher DOK levels. Okay? So that would be my advice. Here's another chart. This is Bloom's taxonomy. A lot of you remember Bloom's taxonomy, plus depth of knowledge. And so we can see that down here we have Bloom's taxonomy, and then we have recall. So recall and reproduction is remembering, understanding, skills and concepts. That's when kids apply it. So when they're actually reading, they're applying those skills, right? So it's a higher level thinking. Analyzing and evaluate, that's your strategic thinking. So even if the kids can't, here's what's important. You are modeling the strategic thinking in whole group instruction by doing think alouds, by explaining the thinking that you're doing. And then when the kids do the centers, now they're doing the extended thinking. They're applying that. So what I did is I completed a little lesson plan for you. And so this kind of shows you what a completed lesson may look like that I did. And so I did this for, did I put that? Yeah, kindergarten. And so the unit's going places. The standard is with prompting and support, ask and answer questions. And it's a DOK1. So not a high DOK. How does imagination make a place seem different is my essential question. I have my objectives. That's right there in the PowerPoint. So you don't have to come up with that. And then what are my instructional activities? I'm going to introduce realistic fiction, model and practice. I'm going to introduce a character setting, explain this in a real place, use a turn and talk to have students explain why this is realistic fiction. I'm going to review the anchor chart on realistic fiction and vocabulary. Differentiation. Show examples of other realistic fiction, books from class library that has characters that could be real. Students should use a complete sentence to say the character setting. An assessment is going to be at the completion of the story. Students will complete a story map in which they draw the characters, the setting, and the story. In small groups, we're going to read realistic fiction. So that's an example of how I filled out that lesson plan. Okay. So pacing. Have you guys heard of pacing guides? Well, BIE does have pacing guides. So what I have included here is a link to all of your pacing guides. So since we were talking about, let's go to second grade. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do second grade. Now this is a pacing guide that BIE came up with. So we can see that it is now in September, right? So We are probably, all of you should be, we're about week 6, maybe week 5, week 6. Not, I mean, really, we're more week 7. So in 2nd grade, everyone should be on unit 2, Nature's Wonder. That's the story they should be on. And these are the learning targets. Now, what BIE has done is they have given you the essential standards that you need to know. So use this pacing guide so you'll know, because in Savez, it's going to have 10 different standards. BIE has said, let's focus on these 3. These are the core standards you need to work on for this week. Okay? So you can go back here again. Let's look at 7th grade. Here's the pacing guide for 7th grade. Maybe, I wonder if 7th grade's the one that's not done. Yeah, they're not done with it. So we can see 7th grade should be on a work in progress. So I think literally this is a work in progress because it's not done. Let's go to 5th grade pacing guide. So Miss Mondel might be doing this one. So we can see that, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. In September, she should be on Picturesque Journey on Unit 1, Week 5. And it has the ELA standard that focused on. So this pacing guide is going to be really important that you utilize it. So planning, we're almost done, I promise. I know I'm tired too. Planning for units and weeks. So what I want to do is I want to show you how you can get some information that I think will help you. So I'm going to go back into Savez. Again, I may have to click back and forth so I can remember how to do this. I'm going to open in a new window. Let's just go to 2nd grade. And remember, got to do for implementation. For implementation, 2nd grade, that's where we got the PowerPoints. But here we have this detailed scope and sequence. Let's go here. This is the detailed scope and sequence that has everything you're doing that week. So, Unit 2, let's say you're Unit 2, Week 5, or Week 4. Here's your question. There's your key vocabulary. Here's the genre, the stories you're going to be reading. Everything's right there. It's great. Now, if you wanted, there's something else on here. It is called Common, let's do Edible Planner. So I'm hoping that Dr. Winder will, tell you if this is something that you can do. But I definitely think it'll help you. So I'm downloading this Edible Planner. It's going to take a minute. Let me put it up here. And sorry, let me present it here. Okay, here is a copy of, oh, they told me to try again. There we go. Okay, so here is the Edible Planner. And so what I'm going to show you here is, let's just go to, well, we were talking about Unit 2, weren't we? So let's go to Unit 2. Here's all your units, and I can see here that Unit 1, I'm going to go to Unit 2, because maybe we should be at Unit 2 by now, right? So I'm going to go over here to Unit 2. Okay, here we go. Unit 2, Week 1. So I can see here that this is the foundational skills. Again, I would skip the foundational skills because you're going to get that new fly. I can see this week you have all of these lessons that you're going to be doing. Those are the shared reading lessons, the whole group reading lessons that you're going to be doing. And I can see the standards. So What you could do is, and then you have writing, what you're going to work on for writing, and conventions. What you could do is, since this is editable, since you can edit it, you can erase, delete. If it was me, I would be deleting these sections. And maybe what I would put in here is the U-Fly lesson I'm on, right? To show, okay, I'm going to do this U-Fly lesson. And then you have your whole group. And what you could possibly do is use some of this to write in your centers. Maybe delete it. If it were me, I would put centers. So write that in here. Then I would write my centers on here. So this is another planning tool, and it's already been started for you. So again, use the resources that Savas has because it's extensive resources. Okay. Promise I'm almost done. You guys are going to get sick of me, aren't you? Okay. So let's kind of conclude here. And you know what? Someone is going to be on, is answering, is knocking on my door. So, and I got a phone call at the same time. So I'm just going to ignore that for now. So to kind of conclude, man, I thought I was going to get through this whole thing without any interruptions. That did not happen. So why is planning important and what are the consequences of not planning? Those are the two things, the two questions that I'd like you to address, because this whole PD has been talking about planning, about the consequences of not planning. So we started out by looking at the ELA block. We looked at that 20-60-20 framework. I showed you how your schedule fits into that 20-60-20 framework. And then I gave you lots of resources. I showed you some lesson plan templates and some resources that you can use for planning. So if you can, please email myself and Dr. Winder. Let us know that you watched the training, you completed it, and answer this question. Why is planning important? What are the consequences of not planning? Yeah, okay, got a plan. That is all I have for you. I hope you guys have an absolutely phenomenal 3-day weekend. If you need any help at all on any of this, please email me. I have time in the contract that I have to meet with you individually, to do individual coaching. I want to do that. I love doing it. Keeps me in the groove. So please reach out. We'll have individual conferences. We can go over planning, especially I think if you're long-term sub and things are new for you, you may need some extra coaching. So please reach out. And again, have a wonderful, wonderful 3-day break. I hope you enjoyed the PD. If you want to give me feedback on it, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.